Hey guys, this is Netty with Rocket Pirate Sound, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys my recreation of Flume Highest Building and how you can recreate it as well. So this is what my recreation sounds like. So I only did 8 bars because the other half would have taken way too long to recreate, but let's get into it. So first off, it's despite how like crazy the song sounds, the layers are pretty simple and like the arrangement of it is quite simple. It's just that the specifics of it are very detailed. So what I mean by that is like there's a lot going on per layer, which is what makes it actually an interesting song. So like let's start with you know, like what's in the actual like project file. So we've got this main sub bass thing. Sounds like this. It's got a lot going on, as you can tell. It's also got this little, we've also got this little reverse sweep, like right here. That goes like into the next part of the sub bass. Then we have the lead. As such, I just realized I forgot to sidechain this part. Fixed. Yeah, we've got the lead there. And then we have just the drums, so we have... So the snare has some like weird processing on it, and I'll get into that later, but other than that it's just kind of stock samples. So let's dive into the patches. So first thing, we have this sub bass. Let's go into the sub bass. So there's kind of just a lot of automation going to be going on here, so I can't really explain to you like every single thing that I automated without it just taking absolutely ages, so apologies for that, but I will try to kind of summarize it a bit. So to start off, we have just an operator, and this is just a sine wave, so there's like nothing going on here. I could turn off the processing for it, and it's just really loud, and it has a pitch envelope that goes like up, like from the lower pitch to high pitch, right? It pitches up. And then we have an amp. So what was kind of important about this is that the pitch of the sine wave, like, or sorry, the volume of the sine wave does actually kind of decay slightly. So you can tell that it's not just like a static tone. It kind of like, you can kind of hear the volume like roll off a little bit as it decays, even just slightly in volume, right? So you can kind of hear it like it's slightly more quiet. That's just the high end kind of rolling off a little bit. Then we have a reverb on the sub. Yes, a reverb on the sub. This only comes in at like the second part of the drop right here. And you'll see why in a second. So we'll get to that later. But we have a reverb on the sub. And then we have a saturator that is turned up very, very loudly. This also has some automation going on, and we'll get into that later. But this is just to really get it like, you know, to that absolute fart sub, you know, standard. And so like one thing kind of interesting to notice is like before, like in this part right here, this volume doesn't really automate, but in the second half it does. And so this is to make sure that the sub kind of like has a bit of like time to decay before like this like little break here, as you can see. So this is the reference track right here, by the way. I don't want to play that in case of copyright. I don't know if it would get copyright checked or not, but anyway, we have this little break right here, which sound, you know, it sounds like this. So you kind of want the sub to decay a bit before then, otherwise it just kind of like it's really abrupt, and that could be cool. But I think I don't know what Flume is thinking, but like that's what it sounds like. So I'm just recreating it. So you know that's that. Then we have an EQ. So this is kind of bizarre because you have these like weird like peaks, like this really weird like sub characteristic, and the way I try to emulate that, like I don't know if Flume would have like used my method or maybe like a phaser or something like that, but like I just took like an EQ peak and just like lined it up to the exact pitch, and it's like my question is like how do you think to do this? You know what I mean? Like at what point do you in the production process do you go like, you know what, I want to add a peak at 4,000 hertz, 4.2 kilohertz, and it's going to sound really good. I don't know. I mean, props to him, I guess. But anyway, that just kind of like does some like mild automation. You can kind of see the shape that it's taking on with like the automation. And it only goes up like here and here and here. I think. And also here, I guess. Yeah. in these lower notes, it's just completely quiet. Then we have an OTT. This is really loud. You can see this right here. It's like, it's turned up like 20 decibels. Like the amount for it to return to like, it's like the max volume before it starts clipping is maybe like 10 decibels-ish. So like I pushed this way beyond that. And then after that, we have a saturator. This is just a soft clipper to just like, essentially like keeping the characteristic of the sound, but like making sure it's not like actually clipping into the other sounds, because then it would start getting messy. So that's what this sounds like. And so you can kind of hear it, the peak starts distorting a bit nicer with like the rest of the song, or the rest of the bass. Like before, it's kind of like, it's just kind of like a peak and it's just weird. But here you can kind of hear like the unevenness in the sub kind of like start to distort the rest. So that's like a good quality to have of that. And then we have an EQ. This is just kind of to take down like the mid to high frequencies. Just a little bit to make room for the lead. So like when you have like such an intense bass sound, like if you don't like kind of control it just a little bit, like it'll kind of be a bit overwhelming. So like you can't, you can hear it, right? But like it's just like a slight difference, like, you know what I mean? So that helps a lot. And then lastly, I have an isotope trash too. I like never use this plugin, but I was like trying to think of like ways to just crunch this together just a little bit more with like methods that I haven't already tried because it wasn't quite sounding right. I think I just took the stock thing and just took this point and dragged it up like a little bit, and then like that barely did anything anyway. So you could probably just take a saturator and like turn it up like 6 decibels and get the same result. So, you know, don't mind that, I guess. Well, actually, there's like a dry wet thing. I don't know. I don't know how this plugin works, I'm gonna be honest, but I have it on there, so I should mention it. So then we have this little reverse thing that leads into like, it just leads into like kind of the next phrase. What this is this part resampled like this. And then what I did is I went into the clip and went clip transposition, and then I just pitched it up like this. So it just kind of goes from like very low to like high. I didn't bother trying to get the exact pitch correctly, but the effect is there. Yeah, there you go. And that's kind of it. Like, I talked about some of the automations earlier here on the the volume. Yeah, so like as you can see, I have kind of like these volume automations in the like drop to make sure that the distortion kind of like doesn't that you get the actual decaying bass like aspect. And then yeah, so the reverb, let's talk about the reverb. So there's just like one little section right here. Where the sub gets like really wide all of a sudden. And so like, yeah, what that is like a reverb going into like several distortions. So like at the beginning of the chain, I added a reverb, made sure the low cut was off, and then I just kind of high cut it to like here, I guess. I left the decay like, you know, the same as on the default settings, and then I just turned up the you know, the dry wet, and then like distorted the crap out of it after. Like you can see, this is like 36 decibels of drive, and like it just like makes it go like super like all over the place in the stereo field. So like that's what that effect is. And then, you know, you add the peak as well, and then that just gets super messy, and then you OTT that and, you know, saturate, and you can kind of get the gist of like how this is such a messy like bass. But, you know, Flume is balling like that, so he can get away with it. Yeah, I think that's about it for the sub. So let's just move on to the lead. So this lead has kind of a lot more going on than you might think. These are obsolete. Let me delete some of the stuff that we're not using. Okay, that's all. So yeah, you can kind of see it's a little bit of a long process. This is made using Serum, and it's a basic patch. So let me turn off the post-processing real quicksies. You kind of hear the little MIDI right there. So all this is just 16 voices detuned kind of high for that, just the Flume special. I added some noise. So I turned on the noise oscillator, left it on AC hum 1, and then like turned it up this high. One interesting thing is I FM'd the saw wave to the noise and then turned it up a bit. So like you can kind of hear it. So this is on 41%. You can kind of hear it. It like adds like an interesting like kind of grit to it. So I kind of like just banked on that like ever so slightly. Like it's like not even noticeable, to be honest. Like, yeah, I really underdid it on this one, but you know. And then I added a peak filter, and I made it so that it sits right on the fundamental of the sound. So like if I turn on the EQ, it would be like right here. And then I turn on key track, so like it follows the note at all times, and then it has a bit more like of a kind of interesting like quality. So let me turn this off again, and then you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. So without it sounds like this. With it sounds like this. It just has a bit more of like, it goes from it just goes like kind of, but like, you know, a little bit less extreme. Kind of a funky demonstration there, but yeah, that's kind of it. No effects or anything like that, no LFO stuff going on, just stock saw wave. Other than that, then we have a chorus ensemble. So I have it on the ensemble mode and on like a kind of a extreme amount, and this just adds a lot of width. Let me add a quick utility because it's like kind of quiet. The MIDI on this is kind of wild, obviously. Like this is obviously like so off kilter. What I find kind of interesting about like the way it's arranged is like it kind of progressively gets more and more offbeat. So if you look at the MIDI, right, you obviously have like these little like blocks that indicate like, you know, this is like the beat, right? But you'll kind of notice like it kind of gets progressively more offbeat. So it starts off like just a bit, like a slight bit delayed. And then like, you know, you have this note, which is like a bit more offset than this one. And then this one is like a whole 16th note offset plus some. And then like it kind of resets a little bit. But then this one is really offbeat again. And this is a whole 16th note, like, you know, and then like until you're just like just totally off kilter. And then it resets right here, kind of. So it kind of like slows down as the phrase goes on, which I think is kind of interesting. And then also another interesting thing for like, you know, if you want to like write like a kind of similar melody, is the rhythm on like, you might not have noticed this. It's just like the rhythm on like this first half is the exact same as, or I think it's the exact same as like this half. So like, you know, in case you haven't noticed that, it's like a great way to like add like repetition to your song without it actually being repetitive. So like it's just a great little thing to do to get your like melodies sounding a bit more like ear catching, and like you can actually like kind of, you know, on the second like listen of like the melody, you kind of understand like what's actually going on. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, moving on. We have a redux, and this is, I set the bits kind of low, and so what this does is it adds kind of like a white noise character to it. So like here's what it sounds like without, and then with. You can kind of hear that like high end fizz. So like this, the whole like saw wave patch that like from the original is just like very like weirdly like lo-fi. So like I kind of wanted to capture that, and that's why I added the redux. Let me turn this off, or delete the little utility at the end to turn it up. So then we have an OTT. It's just, you know, it's pretty standard. This is, you know, it's an OTT. Like you got to beef it up a bit. And then an erosion. So this is on the wide noise mode, and it, like what this does is it kind of washes out the tonality of whatever you put it on a bit. So it's kind of subtle here. But you can kind of hear like that like extra like crunch and just like washed outness is kind of coming through a bit more. So I added that as well. And then a EQ to cut out the low end. Standard stuff. Another OTT. And then another EQ, and this one kind of boosts like the high ends like past the fundamental a bit of like the fundamental frequency right here of the saw. And this is kind of just to get it kind of sitting in a mix a little bit better. Like I noticed like it was kind of feeling a bit too like boxy and like, I don't know, insert adjective here, or is that what an adjective is? I don't know. Someone let me know in the comments. Then we have a utility. Why is this utility here? What does this do? Oh yeah, there's this one weird little note in the second half that for some reason is like slightly quieter than the rest. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just automate that in, because I don't know why. Flume is just another being, truly. And then we have a EQ8 to roll off some high end to make it just a little bit more gentle on the ears. So that's what this sounds like. Okay. And then the drums. So interesting thing about I mean, this is just the drums on their own. So the kick here is from the show in browser. This is from the Future Bundle, I believe. Yes, it is the Rumble kick, and I just shortened it up and I frequency shifted it down like 4 hertz because it was like it kind of makes it sit just like ever so slightly more like lower, like. I wanted that just like slight, like, you know, like slight bit of lower presence, and then I added like an EQ to boost the mids quite a bit. And then here's the fun part. The snare is absolutely just ridiculous. So this is also from the Future Bundle. It's the A snare, and it sounds like this without effects. Pretty standard. With effects, it's like a whole different beast. So like, let's get into this because this is like. I don't know why, like, truly just like Flume is the god of making just questionable creative choices make like work, you know? So like, I respect that. And so what I did here, there's a lot going on, I'm gonna be honest. So like, let me just open up some of these like automation lanes. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Just to like kind of demonstrate real quick, like what is even going on here. So okay, these should be all. So what we have going on here, let me turn off all these effects. So first off, I have a parallel chain going on. So in Ableton, what you can do is you can take like 2 signals, or you can take 1 signal and like add an effect, then group that, and then you can like add like separate chains like this. So like what this is doing is it's like taking 2 of the same exact signal and running them like in parallel. And so what that means is we have basically 2 of the same exact snare going on. So like if I, you know, create another chain like these are 2 snares now, right? Like it's the same signal, but then like running in parallel, right? That's so it's called like parallel effect. I don't know. There might be a name for that. So essentially what I did is I took the main snare and just left it dry. So we have that just main snare. And then like on top of it, I have this like layer, which is just doing like, just like a bunch of weird crap. So let's get into that. Let's turn off all these effects real quicksies. And so let's start with a vocoder. So it's not the first effect in the chain, but it kind of is important. So when you listen to the original, you have that like that snare that has that really like glassy overtone. And so like what popped into mind is like, okay, well, I'll just use a vocoder for this. So what I did is I turned the bandwidth all the way down and then like tuned the range on like 8 bands. I tuned the range to like kind of get like a similar result. So you can kind of hear that like, it's really quiet right now. Like you can kind of hear that like weird like, you know, glassiness to it. And so like I was like, okay, great. Let's like kind of tune this a little bit. And so it, like in the so like, you know, the way I kind of tuned it and got that movement is I took the range on the vocoder, which is this one, I think. I just like took it and like automated it around for like the different like types of like snare tonalities. So like you'll kind of like see like what this does is basically like adjust like if you're taking a vocoder on the snare and you're essentially adjusting like the range at which the vocoder is like applying itself. So like by shrinking it, you're getting like these like interesting tonalities. Cause like all this is doing, like all the vocoder is doing is it's taking like all these little bands, right? Like, so all these like little EQ bands, and it's like running them through like the filter. This is like so hard to explain. You might have to look up a tutorial on this. But essentially when you turn down the bandwidth, that's like the same thing as like taking a peak like this and creating like a tonality out of it, but then you're doing that 8 times and they're all evenly spaced. So like that's why this is creating like such a weird like tonality. Like it's just like that's just like a, you know, a snare tail, right? But then you turn it down and you know, you get tonalities. So then what I did is I added EQ before this to cut out the lows, I guess. And then I added like this peak, and this is like sweeping through it. So like this is creating like higher peaks throughout the vocoder. So like you'll hear that like it sweeps kind of up like that. Like you kind of hear that through the vocoder. So like before, like at the end of that like kind of like sound, you kind of hear that. So let me turn this down now. You know, we have a frequency shifter. This is just again to kind of like try to get the tones accurate to the original. So there's just like tuning it down just ever so slightly. It's very minor. And I think this is also being automated a bit somewhere. Yeah, at the end, it's like shifted like way up. So like there's that. And then I had an OTT. Very nice. And then I saturated the crap out of that. So that's really like loud and just like terrible sounding now. This is gonna sound way better with like the actual snare in place, by the way. So then we add a low cut because it's creating like the saturation was creating quite a lot of low end. So I had to cut that out. And then you have all this bogus, and then you add the snare back in, and suddenly it sounds pretty good, right? I also have this like volume automation going on here on the chain itself. So like if I were to take this out and put this to like 0, it sounds pretty bad. You can kind of hear that like initial like transient sounds kind of weird. Like you have that kind of like, but then like an octave higher, like I can't whistle that high, but yeah. So what I did is I just added like a little volume automation like this to get that transient cut out and like to make sure that it properly decays. And this is like varying based on the snare tone, so that's just great. And then that's kind of it, pretty much. And then I just have some sidechaining going on here, and that's like it. So yeah, that's my recreation of Flume Highest Building. So I hope you guys found this educational. Be sure to check out the future bundle if you guys want to get your hands on the specific drum samples that I used in this video. And other than that, I'll see you guys in another video. Bye-bye.